The oldest ghost living in Anderson County can be found at Hunter's Store in Pendleton.
Everybody was gone and I was at the office alone. Well, there's only 3 of us to begin with, but when I was there alone, I heard what sounded like a box of something heavy, like books or something, that sounded like that fell off a shelf, scattered across the floor, and then I heard running footsteps. And I thought, well, there's nobody up there as far as I know. I wonder if it's an animal or what's going on. So I went upstairs to see what it was, and nothing was out of place, and there was nothing going on. And I thought, that's really weird. So when the other ones got back and I told them about what had happened and what I heard, they looked uncomfortable at each other and said, well, the building's haunted and we hadn't told you yet. And so it seems like everyone that's ever worked there has had a similar experience of hearing footsteps or some kind of noises going on upstairs when no one's up there. And it's not just creaky noises, it's definitely sounds like definite footsteps and that sort of thing. And we asked a gentleman who was one of the Hunter family members, the Hunter store, and he lived to be 102. When he was in his late 90s, we finally had sense enough to ask him if he knew if the building was haunted. And he not only knew it was, he knew who it was and the story behind it. And he told us that the second floor had been where the research room was, had been a caretaker's apartment. It had a fireplace in it, and that once in May in the 1890s, there was a gentleman that was friends with the Hunter boys, and that he got drunk, fell off his horse in the creek down the hill behind the store. They took him to the store and put him to bed in the caretaker's room. That they left him in his wet clothes overnight, and they had one of those cold snaps like you do in late spring sometime. And when they checked on him the next morning, he was dead from being, like they said, he froze to death, but of course I'm sure he wasn't frozen solid. And that's who haunts the building. And to prove it, there's a couple of places on the door frame going into that room that have not been painted over, because it's written in pencil on the door frame is the notation "very cold" and a date in May in 1896. And so there's, like I said, everyone that's ever worked there has heard him or seen him. And I know 3 or 4 other people that have seen him through the years, and I saw him once.
So, Hunter's store lately, we had a little ghost encounter happen, and 2 employees that were there, nobody was there. Les McCall had left with a couple of people. They were running some shelves or something over to another site, and they were downstairs working at the front desk, Miss Rhonda and Miss Jessica, and all of a sudden, they both heard just banging noises, like stuff was just falling on the floor upstairs, and like flying off the shelves and just banging the floor. And they just heard bang, 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 like for about like 30 seconds. And so Miss Rhonda was like, looked over to Jessica and she was like, do you think that they're okay? And Miss Jessica was like, nobody's up there. And Miss Rhonda was like, yeah, Les is up there. And she was like, no, they left about 15 minutes ago. And so Jessica went up there and she said she saw nothing on the floor. But she said it just sounded like wind was just knocking everything down. But everything was fine. So that's our latest little ghost story from Hunter's store.
Many have encountered downtown Anderson's ghost. Sister Rose Loomis, a Catholic nun who died in the early 1920s at the Chicola Hotel. The hotel's 45 elegant rooms were coveted by visitors, and the ballroom and dining rooms made it a southeastern event center all across the country. Several stage and movie and screen celebrities, including Jimmy Durante, Tallulah Bankhead, and Helen Hayes, showed up on the Chicola guest register, and William Jennings Bryant made a campaign speech from the veranda during his bid for the presidency. But Rose Loomis, a nun from the Northeast, occupied a room on the top floor where she lived quietly while she made plans for a Catholic school in Anderson just after World War I. But less than a year after she arrived, Loomis was found dead at the foot of the second floor stair landing. It was ruled an accident, but there were whispers by those who had opposed the Catholic school in town that something may have been amiss, and that someone might have been responsible for the nun's death. Since that time, dozens have reported seeing the nun in a window on the top floor of the old hotel. When the Chicola fell into disrepair and was largely a storage building in the 1960s. Some even said you could hear her walking around on the top floor late at night. A heating repairman who didn't believe in ghosts, he was a Baptist, tells this story.
I had a man out, and so I had to go down to work on the heating and air conditioning unit down in the basement of the plaza. And I was down there. It's a small room with a little stairwell coming down in there. There's rock walls and the ceiling's real low. And I was working on the pipes, which were up there near the stairwell. So I was kind of looking toward the stairs and the light, and I heard something behind me, and turned around. There was a nun there. I was trying to figure out, why would a nun be down in the basement of this building we're renovating? And so I turned back around to turn my tool off that was making noise to talk to her. And when I did, the next time I looked, she was gone. There's no way she could have got up those steps next to where I was. So that really creeped me out. So I got out of there. I left my tools, I left everything, and I let somebody else go back and get them. I don't know about anybody else, but I now believe in the nun, the ghost that's a nun in the Plaza Hotel.
Sullivan building was the music building. It started off as the president's home.
Okay.
And the story is that the president had a daughter who, I don't remember all the details, but she hanged herself because I think we were a good Baptist school, and she started being in love with a Catholic boy.
Oh,
which
couldn't have that.
Which could never work.
No.
So, in desperation, she hanged herself. But she was a pianist.
Students and custodial workers have also reported encounters in the years since, usually very late at night or very early in the morning. There's usually a gentle glowing, semi-transparent figure of a young lady seated at a piano, crying as she plays. She tells people who ask her name is Anna, and says her father did not approve of her fiancé. Many claim to have heard the woman singing and playing piano after hours in a locked and empty room. Others said they've heard footsteps or found faucets running in the locked, deserted building. The former director of the college's physical plant at the time, Olin Paget, said that he would never be caught in that music building before daylight. And still others reported hearing singing and sometimes someone playing the piano in the pre-dawn hours. No one has reported hearing the woman when she hung herself. But perhaps the most talked about ghosts in Anderson County are at the crossing of the Rocky River at the High Shoals Point, a place where an abandoned bridge is one of Anderson's most ghostly sights. The Crybaby Bridge, overgrown as it is still 194 feet long and 17 feet wide. What was on the site before the bridge, no one knows for sure, but the grist mill was once there. The haunted history of Crybaby Bridge, though, began way before the bridge got to Anderson. In 1919, when the bridge was being built in Virginia, Mally Richmond, one of the workers on the bridge, fell to his death 13 days after the birth of his daughter Maya. After that, workers on the project said that after Richmond's death, as the sun set at the end of each day, there was a sound no one could explain. Some said it was the settling and creaking of the spans being assembled. Others said it sounded like a man crying. Others said it sounded like a man calling the name Maya. When the completed bridge was taken to Charleston, it was used there until 1952, but people in Charleston commented on the bridge as well. There was always something odd about the bridge. Dogs would not cross it. Birds would not light upon it. One local report suggested the bridge was carrying a small amount of electric current from nearby wires. It creaked and groaned when automobiles crossed, and some said the squeak sounded like a crying child. Many folks in Charleston avoided that bridge altogether. But when Crybaby Bridge was moved to Anderson in 1952, new stories were added to the legend. A local farm girl, an unwed mother, had given birth to a baby on September 30th, 1954. 2 days later, her mother had died in a farming accident, leaving her alone with the baby. 13 days later, on October 13th, she received a telegram that her young husband had been killed in an accident on the Army base where he was training. On October 30th, 1954, as a fingernail moon shone bright in a clear, cold October night sky, the young woman walked across Crybaby Bridge with her child and, halfway across, tossed the crying baby into the river below. She was found weeks later, hanging from a rafter in the tiny sharecropper house where she had lived with her late mother. The following October, neighbors began to report hearing the sounds of babies crying around the bridge. The sound would carry late at night across the fields and into the woods and through the surrounding countryside. People who regularly traveled the bridge began to report seeing a woman standing on the side of the bridge, looking into the water below. Some said the figure was saying, "I killed my baby." Others, "Don't cry, baby." Both were followed by the sound of a baby crying. As the years passed, many Andersonians and other people have heard the crying or seen the apparition of the woman dressed entirely in white floating near the bridge, purportedly looking for her lost baby. If you want to see or hear one of the ghosts of Crybaby Bridge, your best chance to visit is during a crescent moon at least 2 hours after full dark. Get out of your car, put your keys on the hood, and say, "Where is the baby?" Within 60 seconds, many have reported hearing, crying, or seeing the ghost. But beware, others have reported their cars refused to start, or their headlights failed to work after this encounter with the ghost of Crybaby Bridge.